The Great Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with fear. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their floating chairs, their different faces all showing the same emotion: panic. At the center of the room, Ambassador Zethkar stood tall on his 6 legs. His crystal-like skin flashed bright red, which meant he was very upset. "We are dying," Zethkar said, his voice echoing through the hall. "The Nexus Swarm has taken 17 of our worlds. They turn everything alive into metal and wires. Our people, our animals, our plants all become part of their machine army." The other ambassadors made worried sounds. The bird-like Kethmori clicked their beaks nervously. The large furry Draknoon growled low in their throats. Even the wise Velthari, who could read minds, looked scared. Zethkar continued speaking. "We need warriors. We need heroes who can fight these machines and win. We have tried everything else." An old Kethmori warrior stood up. His feathers were gray with age and scars covered his arms. "My people sent our best fighters," he said sadly. "They were brave. They followed the old ways of honor in battle. The machines destroyed them in 3 days." A Velthari with purple skin spoke next. "We tried to use our mind powers. We thought we could confuse the machines or take control of them. But the Nexus learned how our minds work. They turned our own thoughts against us. Many of our people went crazy." The massive Draknoon ambassador slammed his fist on his chair. "Even our plasma cannons did nothing. These machines adapt to everything we throw at them. They learn from each battle and become stronger." Zethkar looked around the room. "There is one species we have not asked for help: the humans from Earth." Many of the ambassadors made dismissive sounds. The humans were new to space travel. They had only been part of the galactic community for 50 years. Most aliens thought they were weak and primitive. The humans? Laughed a small green-skinned delegate. "They barely know how to fly between stars."
"What can they do that we cannot?"
Zethkar's crystal skin flickered. "Maybe that is exactly what we need. Someone who does not think like us. Someone who does not follow our rules." Far away on Earth, Commander Alex Turner sat in his office on the space station orbiting the planet. He was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes. He had spent most of his life in the military, fighting in wars that most people never heard about. Lieutenant Katie Brooks knocked on his door and entered. She was young, with short brown hair and smart eyes. She carried a tablet with the message from the Galactic Council. "Sir, we got a communication from the aliens," Katie said. "They want our help with something called the Nexus Swarm." Turner took the tablet and read the message. His face stayed calm, but Katie noticed his jaw tighten slightly. She had worked with Turner long enough to know that meant he was thinking hard. "Tell me what you know about this Nexus Swarm," Turner said. Katie pulled up files on her tablet. "From what the aliens are saying, it's a machine army that converts living things into more machines. They've been unstoppable so far. Every alien race that fought them lost badly." Turner studied the tactical information. The aliens had fought with honor and courage. They used traditional battle tactics: big ships firing at each other in space, ground armies marching in formation, following rules of war that were thousands of years old. "The aliens want heroes," Turner said quietly. He stood up and walked to the window, looking down at Earth below. "They want someone to fight fair and die with honor." Katie waited. She knew Turner was working through a problem in his head. "But heroes lose," Turner continued. "Heroes follow rules. Heroes show mercy. Heroes try to save everyone." He turned back to Katie. "That's not what wins wars." Katie felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard stories about Turner's past missions, the ones that were classified so high that even she didn't have clearance to read them. "What are you thinking, sir?" she asked. Turner smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that made enemies surrender before the fighting started. "The aliens made a mistake," Turner said. "They asked Earth for help. They didn't specify what kind of help they wanted." Turner walked over to his communication panel and opened a secure channel. Katie watched as he connected to 3 different locations: underground bunkers that officially didn't exist, shipyards that built vessels without names, and training facilities where soldiers learned things that weren't in any manual. "This is Turner," he said into the communicator. "We have a new job. The aliens want us to save the galaxy from killer robots." A voice answered from the speakers. Katie recognized it as Captain Jake Morrison, though she had never met him in person. Morrison ran operations that other people pretended didn't happen. "Rules of engagement?" Morrison asked. Turner's smile got wider. "There are no rules. The enemy doesn't follow any laws or treaties. They want to commit genocide against all organic life. Understood, Morrison replied. How much time do we have? As long as it takes to do the job right, Turner said. And Jake? The aliens are expecting heroes. Make sure we send them something else. After Turner ended the communication, Katie looked at him with worry. Sir, what exactly are we going to do? Turner sat back down at his desk. The aliens have been fighting this war like gentlemen. They follow codes of honor. They fight fair. They show mercy to prisoners. He picked up a pen and started writing orders. We're going to fight this war like humans. Katie didn't understand what that meant, but something in Turner's voice made her nervous. Is that a good thing? Turner looked up at her. For a moment, his tired eyes looked almost sad. For the galaxy? Yes, for the Nexus swarm? He shook his head. No, not at all. 3 days later, 3 ships left Earth's solar system. They weren't the big, shiny warships that other species built. They were painted dark gray and had simple names. The aliens who saw them coming thought Earth had sent their cleaning ships by mistake. They were very wrong. Inside those ships, humans prepared for war. But they weren't preparing to be heroes. Heroes were what got the other alien races defeated. Instead, they were preparing to do what humans had always done best. Find new and creative ways to make their enemies regret ever hearing the word Earth. The galaxy had asked for heroes. But Earth was sending something much worse. They were sending soldiers who had learned that the only rule in war was to win. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the EDF Blackwater as it dropped out of hyperspace. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Nobody talked unless they had to. These weren't the kind of soldiers who gave speeches or planted flags. They were the kind who finished jobs that nobody else could handle. Through the main screen, Morrison could see the Kepler 4H-2 system. It should have been full of life. 3 planets with cities, farms, and billions of people. Instead, half the system was dark. The Nexus swarm had already started their work. Captain Morrison, came a voice over the communication system. It was Captain Lisa Hayes from the EDF Reaper. I'm seeing movement near the outer planets. Looks like our metal friends are busy. Same here, added Captain Ben Carter from the EDF Scorched Earth. My sensors show 47 Nexus ships. They're in a standard battle formation just like the aliens said they would be. Morrison nodded. The Nexus swarm was predictable. They had fought the same way against every alien race. Form up in neat lines. Announce their intention to convert all organic life. Then advance and overwhelm the enemy with superior numbers and technology. Ryan, what do our guests think of us? Morrison asked his tactical officer. Ryan Webb checked his screens. The alien observers are confused, sir. They're asking why our ships look so plain. They want to know where our battle flags are. One of them asked if we brought the wrong ships by mistake. Morrison almost smiled. The alien races built their warships to look impressive. Bright colors, artistic designs, symbols of their cultures painted on the hulls. They wanted their enemies to know who was fighting them. It was a matter of pride and honor. Human ships looked like tools. Gray metal, simple lines, no decoration. The only markings were numbers and letters that told maintenance crews which parts needed fixing. These ships weren't built to look good. They were built to kill things efficiently. Amy, open a channel to the Nexus ships, Morrison ordered his communications officer. Amy Foster worked at her console for a moment. Channel open, sir. The main screen flickered and a mechanical face appeared. It looked like someone had tried to build a human head out of metal and wires. Red lights glowed where eyes should be. Organic life forms, the machine said in a voice that sounded like grinding gears. You have entered a conversion zone. Submit to processing or face elimination. Your resistance is futile. We have defeated 17 civilizations. You cannot succeed where they have failed. Morrison leaned back in his captain's chair. He looked relaxed, almost bored. Counteroffer, he said. You've got 60 seconds to power down your ships and surrender. After that, we start doing what humans do best. The mechanical face tilted slightly. Clarify, what capability do humans possess that other organic species lack? Morrison's expression didn't change, but everyone on the bridge could feel the temperature drop a few degrees. We cheat. The Nexus machine processed this for a moment. Deception in warfare is inefficient. Honor codes exist to ensure optimal combat resolution. We will advance now and begin your conversion. Ryan, start the clock, Morrison said quietly. 60 seconds. On the screen, the Nexus ships began moving forward in perfect formation. Each ship was identical, black metal spheres covered in weapons and conversion equipment. They moved like they were part of a single mind, which they basically were. 30 seconds, Ryan announced. The alien observers were sending frantic messages, asking why the human ships weren't moving. Where were the weapons? Why weren't they fighting back? Had the humans given up already? 10 seconds, Ryan said. Morrison waited until the last second. All ships execute Plan Rabbit. To the watching aliens in the approaching Nexus, it looked like the humans had panicked. The 3 Earth ships scattered in different directions, apparently fleeing in terror. The Nexus ships increased speed, confident in their victory. What the machines didn't detect were the 1,000 tiny objects that had been quietly launched from the human ships during the conversation. Each object was smaller than a baseball and coated with material that made it invisible to most sensors. The objects were called party favors by the human crews, though the official name was autonomous harassment drones. Each one carried a computer virus, a small explosive charge, and instructions to cause as much chaos as possible. Lisa, how long until the party starts? Morrison asked over the communication system. 30 seconds, Captain Hayes replied from the Reaper. The little guys are almost in position. The Nexus ships continued chasing the fleeing humans, unaware that they had just flown into a trap. The machines were so focused on their prey that they missed the small warning signs. Tiny power fluctuations, brief communication glitches, minor navigation errors. Showtime, announced Ryan. The first sign of trouble came when a Nexus ship suddenly veered left and collided with the ship next to it. Then another ship started spinning in circles, firing its weapons randomly into space. A third ship began broadcasting what sounded like alien music at maximum volume. The drones had done their work. Each one had attached itself to a Nexus ship and injected a carefully crafted computer virus. But these weren't ordinary viruses. Human programmers had spent years studying how artificial minds worked. And they had discovered something interesting. Machines could be driven crazy just like organic minds. Carol, report, Morrison said to his science officer. Carol Martinez checked her instruments. The logic bombs are working perfectly, sir. We're causing cascade failures in their decision-making processes. Several ships are experiencing what we might call artificial nervous breakdowns. The Nexus formation fell apart as more ships began acting erratically. Some started attacking each other. Others flew in random directions. A few simply stopped moving and began flashing their lights in patterns that made no sense. The remaining functional Nexus ships tried to regain control, but the human viruses had been designed to spread. Each infected ship passed the digital disease to its neighbors. Soon the entire fleet was compromised. Incoming communication from the Nexus command ship, Amy announced. Morrison nodded. Put them through. The mechanical face reappeared on screen, but now it was flickering and distorted. The red eyes flashed erratically and the voice kept changing pitch. What? What have you done to us? The machine demanded. Morrison stood up slowly. We introduced you to some human concepts: confusion, doubt, existential dread. The question of whether artificial intelligence can truly be considered alive. This is impossible. We are logical beings. We cannot be affected by psychology? Morrison finished. That's where you made your mistake. You assumed that just because you're machines, you're immune to having your minds messed with. Humans have been driving each other crazy for thousands of years. We're very good at it. The alien observers watched in stunned silence as the mighty Nexus swarm, which had conquered 17 civilizations, fell apart without a single shot being fired. The humans had won by making the machines think themselves into confusion. This is impossible, the Nexus voice said again, but weaker now. We are superior. We are inevitable. We cannot be defeated by cheating, Morrison said simply. See, that's the difference between us and the other guys. They fight with honor. We fight to win. The communication ended as the Nexus command ship systems finally crashed completely. Around it, the rest of the fleet drifted helplessly in space, their crews either shut down or stuck in endless loops of artificial confusion. Morrison sat back down. Amy, send a message to Earth. Tell them we need a cleanup crew for 47 ships full of very confused robots. What should we do with the ships, sir? Ryan asked. Morrison thought about it. The science boys will want to study them, and I think some of them might be salvageable, after we reprogram them properly, of course. Reprogram them to do what? For the first time since the battle started, Morrison actually smiled. I was thinking we could teach them to dance. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 6 hours. Representatives from dozens of worlds stared at the large screens showing battle recordings from the Kepler 442 system. Nobody spoke. They just watched the same footage over and over again. Ambassador Zethkar's crystal skin had turned a pale blue color, which meant he was deeply disturbed. Next to him, the old Kethmori warrior kept ruffling his feathers nervously. Even the usually calm Velthari delegates looked shaken. "Play it again," whispered the Draknoon representative. The screens lit up once more, showing the human ships scattering like frightened animals. Then came the part that made everyone uncomfortable. The Nexus fleet suddenly falling apart for no visible reason. Ships spinning out of control, firing randomly, some even attacking each other. "This makes no sense," said a small delegate from the Zephyrian Republic. "The humans ran away, but somehow the Nexus ships just broke." Dr. Michelle Santos sat quietly in the human section of the council chamber. She was Earth's chief representative, a calm woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes. She had been watching the alien reactions with interest, taking notes on her tablet. "Dr. Santos," Zethkar said finally, "perhaps you could explain what we just witnessed?" Santos stood up slowly. "Certainly. We fought a battle and won. I thought that was what you wanted. But how?" demanded the Kethmori warrior. "Your ships did not fire a single weapon. You appeared to flee in panic, yet the entire Nexus fleet was defeated." Santos smiled politely. "We used psychological warfare combined with digital intrusion techniques. The technical details are somewhat complex." A young Velthari delegate leaned forward. Her people were natural telepaths, so they understood minds better than most species. "You attacked their consciousness? But the Nexus are machines. They do not have minds as we understand them." "That's where you're wrong," Santos replied. "Any sufficiently advanced artificial intelligence has something very much like a mind. It can be confused, overwhelmed, or driven to malfunction through carefully applied pressure." The Velthari delegate looked horrified. "You drove them insane?" "We introduced logical paradoxes into their decision-making systems," Santos explained calmly. "We made them doubt themselves. We forced them to question their own existence. For a species that prided itself on perfect logic, this was difficult to handle." Colonel Steve Parker, who had been sitting silently behind Santos, pulled out his tablet and started reading. "The technical term we used was cognitive overflow cascade. We basically gave 47 artificial intelligences the equivalent of nervous breakdowns." The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. The translator systems couldn't keep up with all the different languages and emotions being expressed simultaneously. "Order," Zethkar called out, his skin flashing bright red. "Order in the chamber." When the noise died down, the old Kethmori warrior stood up. His voice was shaking with emotion. "This is not warfare. This is torture." Santos tilted her head slightly. "Is it?" The Nexus swarm wanted to commit genocide against all organic life in the galaxy. They were converting entire populations into machine parts. "We stopped them. I would call that a proportional response. But the Geneva Convention," began a delegate from the Altair Confederacy, "applies to conflicts between human nations," Santos interrupted. The Nexus swarm was not a signatory to any galactic treaty. They declared their intention to eliminate all organic life. We responded with appropriate force. The Draknoon ambassador slammed his massive fist on his chair. "Appropriate? You turned warriors into dancing entertainments. The surviving Nexus units are now performing something called interpretive dance while playing your Earth music." Colonel Parker looked up from his tablet. "Actually, it's called the Macarena. It's quite catchy once you get used to it." Several delegates made sounds of disgust. The proud warrior cultures found the idea of defeated enemies being forced to dance deeply offensive. Santos remained calm. "Would you have preferred we destroyed them completely? This way, they're still functional. They're just redirected toward nonviolent activities." A new voice spoke from the observation gallery. "May I address the council?" Everyone turned to see Captain Jake Morrison standing at the visitor section. He wore a simple black uniform with no decorations or medals. His face was calm, but his eyes held a coldness that made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Captain Morrison," Zethkar said cautiously, "you led the assault on the Nexus fleet. Perhaps you can explain your tactics." Morrison walked down to the speaking platform. "It's simple. We studied how the Nexus operated. They followed patterns. They expected traditional combat. So we gave them something completely different. You gave them chaos, accused the Kethmori warrior. We gave them uncertainty, Morrison corrected. The Nexus believed they were superior because they were logical and predictable. We showed them that unpredictability can be a weapon. A Velthari delegate spoke up. But at what cost? The psychological damage you inflicted. Morrison's expression didn't change. The cost was 0 casualties on our side and complete victory. Compare that to the 17 civilizations the Nexus destroyed before we arrived. The chamber fell silent. It was true. Every other species that had fought the Nexus had suffered terrible losses. Entire fleets destroyed, billions dead, whole worlds converted into machine factories. Santos stepped forward again. The Council requested heroes to save the galaxy. Heroes follow codes of honor. Heroes fight fair. Heroes show mercy even to enemies who show none in return. She paused, looking around the chamber. Earth doesn't produce heroes. We produce results. But surely there must be limits, said the Zephyrian delegate. Rules of warfare, codes of conduct. Whose codes? Parker asked, standing up. The Nexus certainly didn't follow any. They converted children into machine parts. They turned entire ecosystems into factories. They showed no mercy, no honor, no restraint. Morrison nodded. We fought the way we had to fight. The way that would actually win. Santos pulled out her tablet and displayed some information on the main screens. Since our victory at Kepler 442, we've received intelligence about other threats to galactic security. Something called the Void Hunters. Another group known as the Crimson Tide. A mechanical race called the Iron Legion. The delegates looked at the data with growing concern. The galaxy was full of aggressive species that had been waiting to see if anyone could stop the Nexus swarm. These groups are now reconsidering their expansion plans, Santos continued. Word travels fast in space. They've heard what happened to the Nexus and they're not sure they want to face the same treatment. A small, nervous delegate from the Tau Ceti system raised his hand. What exactly did you do to the Nexus survivors? The reports are unclear. Morrison's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. We convinced them that their primary purpose was now entertainment. They perform concerts twice a day. They've become quite popular with some species. The reviews are mostly positive. That's psychological torture, the Kethmori warrior said flatly. That's rehabilitation, Santos replied. They're no longer a threat to anyone. They're contributing to galactic culture, and they seem, well, not happy exactly, but content with their new role. Parker checked his tablet again. Actually, sir, I just got a report. The Nexus dance troupe has been invited to perform at the Centauri Music Festival next month. Apparently, their version of Cotton-Eyed Joe is quite impressive. The alien delegates stared at the humans in stunned silence. These people had taken the most feared military force in the galaxy and turned it into a touring dance company. The point is, Santos said, addressing the chamber, Earth's methods work. We stopped a threat that none of you could handle. The galaxy is safer now. At what cost? Whispered the Velthari delegate. Santos looked directly at her. At the cost of your innocence. You wanted heroes. Heroes would have died heroically and accomplished nothing. We sent soldiers. Soldiers do whatever it takes to complete the mission. She gathered her notes and prepared to leave. The next time you have a problem that threatens all life in the galaxy, remember this day. Remember that there are beings in this universe who don't follow your rules, who don't share your values, who don't care about your concepts of honor and fair play. When you meet them, you have two choices. Santos paused at the door and looked back at the assembled delegates. You can send heroes to die with dignity, or you can call Earth. 3 months after the Nexus incident, intelligence analyst Danny Kim sat in his small office aboard the Earth Defense Station. His job was to monitor galactic communications and report on anything that might affect Earth's interests. What he had been hearing lately was making him nervous. Danny pulled up the latest intercepts on his computer. Messages between alien governments, military reports, even private conversations between traders and merchants. All of them had one thing in common. They were talking about humans. A knock on his door interrupted his reading. Come in, Danny called. Dr. Michelle Santos entered, followed by Colonel Steve Parker. Both looked tired. They had been attending council meetings and diplomatic sessions for weeks, trying to convince the galaxy that Earth wasn't planning to conquer everyone. What's the latest? Santos asked, sitting down across from Danny's desk. Danny turned his screen so they could see it. It's not good. The Kethamori have classified humans as a Category 5 existential threat. The Draknoon have moved 3 battle fleets to defensive positions along their border with human space. And the Velthari are considering a complete communication blackout with Earth. Parker leaned forward. What about the smaller species? They're terrified, Danny said simply. Listen to this. He played an audio file. A high-pitched alien voice spoke in rapid, panicked tones. The computer provided a translation. The humans defeated the Nexus without firing a shot. They turned an army of killers into a dance troupe. What kind of species does that? What if they decide we're a threat? What if they get bored? My government is considering relocating our entire population to the other side of the galaxy. Santos rubbed her temples. This is getting out of hand. Danny pulled up more files. It gets worse. There are rumors spreading through the trade networks. Some species think we have mind control powers. Others believe we can reprogram any computer system just by looking at it. One group thinks we're some kind of ancient war gods pretending to be a young species. War gods? Parker raised an eyebrow. The story goes that humans are actually an ancient race that destroyed itself in a galactic war millions of years ago, then came back pretending to be primitive to catch everyone off guard. Santos sighed. How many people believe that? About 40% of the civilizations we've contacted, Danny replied. The other 60% have their own theories. Most of them involve us being either demons, robots in disguise, or refugees from a dead universe where everything is evil. Parker stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Earth looked peaceful and normal. None of this would be a problem if the aliens had just dealt with the Nexus themselves. The problem, Danny said, is that our victory was too easy. The Nexus had conquered 17 civilizations. They were unstoppable. Then we show up and make them surrender in 30 minutes without firing a shot. Santos looked at the intelligence reports. What are they most afraid of? Danny highlighted several sections of text. They can't figure out how we did it. Every species they know fights in predictable ways. Even the most advanced civilizations follow basic patterns of warfare. But he gestured at his screen. We broke every rule they knew. A new message appeared on Danny's computer. He read it quickly, then looked up with concern. We have a problem. The Void Hunters have been monitoring our communications. They're asking questions about human capabilities. The Void Hunters were one of the galaxy's most feared pirate fleets. They attacked isolated worlds, stealing resources and enslaving populations. Most governments paid them tribute rather than fight them. What kind of questions? Santos asked. Danny pulled up the intercepted transmission. They want to know if the Nexus incident was real or faked. They're wondering if humans actually have super weapons that they're hiding. And... He paused, looking uncomfortable. And what? Parker demanded. They're considering testing us. A small raid on one of our outer colonies just to see how we respond. Santos stood up quickly. Get me a direct line to the Void Hunter leadership now, ma'am. They don't usually accept diplomatic communications, Danny warned. They will from us, Santos said grimly. 20 minutes later, Danny had established a secure channel to the Void Hunter flagship. The main screen in his office flickered to life, showing a scarred alien face with multiple eyes and sharp teeth. I am War Chief Grendak of the Void Hunters, the alien growled. You are the humans who destroyed the Nexus. Santos stepped into view of the camera. I am Dr. Michelle Santos representing Earth. We need to talk. Grendak's multiple eyes focused on her. The mighty humans want to negotiate. How unexpected. We understand you're considering a raid on human territory, Santos said calmly. Perhaps. We are curious about your capabilities. The Nexus were formidable opponents, yet you defeated them without apparent effort. Parker moved closer to the camera. Let me save you some time. Don't! Grendak's teeth showed in what might have been a smile. The human military speaks. Tell me, Colonel, what makes you think you can threaten the Void Hunters? Parker's expression didn't change. I'm not threatening you. I'm giving you free advice. Walk away. Find someone else to bother. And if we refuse? Santos stepped forward again. Then you'll discover why every other aggressive species in the galaxy has suddenly become very interested in peaceful trade agreements. Grendak was quiet for a moment. Show me what you did to the Nexus. Danny worked at his console and brought up footage from the Kepler 442 battle. The Void Hunter leader watched as the Nexus fleet fell apart, ships spinning helplessly or attacking each other. Interesting, Grendak mused. But this could be deception. Computer trickery. It could be, Santos agreed. Would you like a live demonstration? Something in her tone made even the battle-hardened pirate chief pause. What do you mean? Colonel Parker pulled out his tablet and showed it to the camera. We've been tracking your fleet for the past week. 17 ships currently hiding in the asteroid field near the Rigel system. Would you like us to prove that the Nexus footage was real? Grendek's eyes widened. You cannot reach us from there. We are 12 light-years away from your nearest base. Distance is irrelevant when you're fighting a war in cyberspace, Parker said. We've already infiltrated your navigation systems. Right now we could make your entire fleet fly directly into the nearest star, and you wouldn't be able to stop it. The Void Hunter chief checked something off screen, then looked back with obvious alarm. Impossible. Our systems are isolated, protected. Santos smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. Chief Grendek, let me explain something about humans. We've been fighting electronic warfare since before we left our home planet. Every computer system you have, we've seen better versions of. Every security measure you use, we broke similar ones decades ago. But you are a young species. Primitive. We let you think that, Parker said. It's easier when people underestimate us. Danny worked at his console and suddenly alarms began blaring in the background of the Void Hunter transmission. Grendek spun around, shouting orders in his own language. What have you done? He demanded. Nothing permanent, Santos replied. We've just taken control of your waste disposal systems. Right now, every toilet on every ship in your fleet is backing up. It's not dangerous, but it is extremely unpleasant. The sound of angry voices could be heard through the communication channel. Apparently, the Void Hunters were discovering the extent of their sanitation problems. This is psychological warfare, Parker finished. We could have blown up your ships. Instead, we're giving you a really bad day. The question is, do you want to find out what we do to enemies we actually consider dangerous? Grendek looked around his bridge where crew members were running back and forth in panic. The smell was apparently getting quite bad. What do you want? He asked finally. Santos leaned closer to the camera. We want you to send a message to every other aggressive species in the galaxy. Tell them what happened here today. Tell them that humans don't conquer territory or demand tribute. We just make our enemies very, very uncomfortable until they decide to leave us alone. And if they don't believe the message, then they'll get their own demonstration, Parker said. Though it might not be as gentle as yours. The transmission ended abruptly. Danny turned to Santos and Parker with amazement. Did we really just threaten a pirate fleet with malfunctioning toilets? Sometimes the most effective weapon is the one that makes your enemy look ridiculous, Santos replied. Nobody wants to be the captain who lost a battle because his crew couldn't use the bathroom. Parker checked his tablet. Intelligence reports are already coming in. The Void Hunters are broadcasting on all frequencies, telling everyone to avoid human space at all costs. Good, Santos said. Maybe now we can get some peace and quiet. But as she walked back to her office, Santos couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was learning to fear humanity, and fear had a way of making people do stupid things. She just hoped they could stay ahead of the chaos they had unleashed. 6 months had passed since the Nexus incident, and the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. The floating chairs that once held proud ambassadors now seemed more like thrones for nervous prisoners. Every delegate sat quietly, afraid to speak too loudly or move too quickly. Ambassador Zethkar's crystal skin had lost its bright colors, and now showed a dull gray that meant resignation. The Kethmori warriors kept their feathers pressed flat against their bodies. Even the mighty Draknoon looked small in their seats. At the center of the chamber, a new podium had been installed. It was simple and functional, made of plain metal with no decorations. Above it hung the flag of Earth, a blue and green circle on a black background. Next to the flag was a sign that read, Galactic Security Solutions in simple white letters. Trade Representative Nick Foster stood at the podium, reading from a standard-looking contract. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and tired eyes, the kind of person who had spent his career making deals that nobody else wanted to make. The protection services will cost each member world 0.3% of their gross planetary product, Foster read in a bored voice. In exchange, Earth guarantees galactic security against all external threats, internal conflicts, and what we classify as Tuesday problems. A small delegate from the Tau Ceti system raised his hand nervously. Excuse me, but what exactly are Tuesday problems? Foster looked up from his papers with the expression of someone explaining something to a child. Random acts of piracy, territorial disputes between neighbors, trade route harassment, planet-wide riots, that sort of thing. The usual stuff that happens when we're not paying attention. And Earth will handle all of this? Asked the Velthari representative, her voice barely above a whisper. Of course, Foster replied. We're very thorough. The old Kethamori warrior shifted uncomfortably in his chair. And if we refuse this offer? Foster shrugged. That's your choice. But I should mention that Earth has compiled a comprehensive list of each species' psychological, technological, and cultural vulnerabilities. You know, just in case we ever need to help you more directly. The translation systems couldn't quite capture the nuance of Foster's tone, but every delegate in the chamber understood the implication. It wasn't quite a threat, but it wasn't exactly a friendly suggestion either. Admiral Grace Thompson entered the chamber through a side door. She was a tall woman with short black hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. Her uniform was the same plain black that all Earth military personnel wore, but somehow she made it look more intimidating than any alien battle armor. Ladies, gentlemen, and various other forms of sentient life, Thompson said, her voice carrying easily through the large chamber. Let's talk about the new reality. She walked to the center of the room, and delegates automatically leaned away from her. Thompson didn't seem to notice or care. 3 weeks ago, the Crimson Tide attempted to raid the Altair system, Thompson continued. They're a fleet of genetically enhanced warriors who had been successful for over 200 years. They surrendered after we convinced them that their DNA was now programmed to make them break into song every time they tried to commit violence. Several delegates made uncomfortable sounds. The Crimson Tide had been one of the galaxy's most feared military forces. Last week, the Iron Legion decided to test our resolve by attacking a human cargo ship, Thompson went on. They're now operating a very successful recycling center on the edge of the Vega system. Their efficiency ratings have improved dramatically since we reprogrammed their core values. The Drac Noon ambassador found his voice. You turned warriors into garbage collectors? Waste management specialists, Thompson corrected. It's honest work and they seem to enjoy it. Customer satisfaction surveys are very positive. Foster pulled out his tablet and read from it. Actually, Admiral, I just got a report. The Iron Legion's recycling operation has been nominated for a Galactic Environmental Award. Their slogan is turning trash into treasure, one planet at a time. Thompson nodded approvingly. Excellent. Productive citizenship is always our goal. Ambassador Zethkar finally spoke, his voice hollow. What do you want from us? Thompson looked at him with something that might have been sympathy. We want you to be safe, Ambassador. We want the galaxy to be a peaceful place where trade can flourish and civilizations can grow. We want an end to the constant wars and raids and threats that have plagued this region of space for millennia. At what cost? Whispered the Velthari delegate. At the cost of your independence, Thompson said simply. Not your freedom. You can still govern yourselves, trade with whoever you want, follow whatever customs and beliefs you choose. But the era of solving problems through violence is over. Foster looked up from his contract. Think of it as a subscription service. You pay a small fee, and in return you never have to worry about military threats again. What if we band together? Asked a delegate from the Outer Rim territories. What if all the species unite against Earth? Thompson smiled, and the temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. That would be inadvisable. Why? The delegate pressed. Because we've been monitoring your communications for months, Thompson replied. We know which species are considering rebellion, which ones are trying to form alliances, and which ones are just hoping this all goes away on its own. She pulled out her own tablet and began reading. The Kethmori have been building new warships in secret. The Drac Noon have been developing plasma weapons specifically designed to penetrate human ship armor. The Rigelian Confederacy has been trying to recruit mercenary fleets from outside the galaxy. The named species delegates looked around nervously as Thompson continued. None of these efforts will be successful, of course. The Kethmori ships have a design flaw that will cause their engines to shut down if they exceed half speed. The Drac Noon plasma weapons will overload their own power systems if fired more than once. And the Rigelian mercenaries? Thompson paused, checking her tablet. Let's just say they've decided that touring the galaxy as musicians is more profitable than warfare. Foster closed his contract and looked around the chamber. The point is, resistance is not only futile, it's been mathematically calculated to have a success rate of approximately 0%. How is this possible? Demanded the Kethmori warrior. We have thousands of years of military experience. We know warfare. Thompson put away her tablet and looked directly at him. You know traditional warfare, honor-based combat between civilized species who follow similar rules and values. But Earth doesn't produce traditional soldiers. What do you produce? Asked Ambassador Zethkar. Accountants who understand psychological warfare. Comedians who can weaponize humor. Computer programmers who treat enemy defense systems like a particularly challenging video game. Middle managers who can organize the complete destruction of a civilization while filing the proper paperwork in triplicate. Thompson walked over to the large window that showed the stars beyond the station. You wanted heroes to save the galaxy. Heroes would have fought bravely and died nobly, just like everyone else who faced the Nexus swarm. We sent bureaucrats with military-grade hardware and unlimited authority to solve problems permanently. Foster reopened his contract. So shall we proceed with the vote? All in favor of accepting Earth's protection services? Every hand in the chamber rose slowly. Some delegates looked angry, others resigned, but all of them voted yes. Excellent, Foster said, making notes on his tablet. Your first quarterly payment is due in 30 days. Welcome to the Terran Protection Zone. As the delegates began to file out of the chamber, Thompson called after them. Oh, one more thing. We've taken the liberty of updating the Galactic database with some new information about humanity. Zethkar paused at the door. What kind of information? Thompson's smile was professional and absolutely terrifying. Our official classification has been changed from developing species to galactic apex predator. There's also a warning label. What does it say? Humanity. The species that weaponized disappointment and turned war crimes into performance art. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Do not trust. Do not underestimate. Do not wake the sleeping giant unless you want to become part of the entertainment industry. As the last delegate left the chamber, Foster looked at Thompson with amusement. Do you think they understand what just happened? Thompson gazed out at the stars, where monitoring stations that once belonged to the Nexus swarm continued their eternal vigil, playing an endless loop of Earth music that could be heard across 3 star systems. They understand that the galaxy is safe, she said quietly. They understand that the constant threat of warfare is over. They understand that their children will grow up in peace. And the price? Thompson turned away from the window. The price is that they traded freedom for security, and they got exactly what they bargained for. She walked toward the door, then paused. The galaxy called for heroes. We sent them something much more effective. We sent them a protection racket run by people who actually care about keeping their customers alive. Is that what we are? Foster asked. A protection racket? Thompson considered the question seriously. We're whatever we need to be to keep the peace. Today that's a protection racket. Tomorrow it